When the notice arrived, he almost laughed. The interspecies housing program had been in the news for weeks, but he never thought it would reach his quiet life. The idea seemed too strange. Humans and aliens living together under one roof like college roommates or neighbors. He expected scientists, ambassadors, or adventurous people to sign up, not someone ordinary like him. But the letter carried his name, the official seal, and instructions he couldn't ignore. They were assigning him an alien guest for 3 months. He stared at the paper for a long time, not knowing if he should be excited or terrified. What was he supposed to say? How was he supposed to act? He barely understood people from his own city. Now they wanted him to host someone from another world. 2 days later, he heard the knock on the door. It was gentle, almost too soft, but he knew. His hands trembled as he opened it, and for the first time in his life, he looked into the eyes of someone not human. She stood there, clutching a small case, her silver eyes shining as if they carried a reflection of the stars. Her skin had a faint shimmer, like moonlight on water, and her posture was both stiff and fragile. She was smaller than he expected, almost his height, but thinner, like she had been carved from delicate crystal. "My name is Lyra," she said quietly, her voice carrying a strange melody in it. Not mechanical, not broken, just different, like music sung by someone who had never learned words the way humans did. She bowed slightly, though awkwardly, as if trying to copy something she had only seen in pictures. For a long moment, neither moved. He realized his mouth was dry, but he managed to smile. I'm Daniel. Come in." She stepped into the apartment with cautious movements, her silver eyes darting around, observing everything. The couch, the table, the soft carpet, the hanging picture frames. Things he never gave a second thought to, she studied with the care of someone entering a temple. He noticed she didn't touch anything. She only stood straight-backed, her small case still in her hands. Daniel cleared his throat. "You can put your bag down. That's your room over there," he said, pointing toward the small guest room. Lyra tilted her head, as if trying to decode the words. Then slowly, she nodded and stepped inside the room. When she came back, her hands were empty, but her eyes kept returning to him, filled with curiosity that made him uneasy. They sat together at the table later that evening, the silence so heavy he almost wished she would hum or cough. Instead, she only watched how he lifted the fork, how he chewed his food, how he sipped his drink. Her gaze was not rude, but it was sharp, like every detail mattered to her. Finally, she spoke. "Human, why do you live this way?" The question startled him. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, searching for words. "You can arrange things. You place soft cloth on chairs. You cover floors with colored fabric. You prepare food in shapes, not just fuel. Everything looks chosen." Daniel blinked. He had never thought about it like that. To him, it was just life. A couch was a couch. A rug was something his mother told him to buy. Food was just dinner, yet to her all of it was strange, maybe even wondrous. He chuckled nervously. "I guess it's just how we live. Comfort maybe, beauty, habit too." She lowered her gaze, repeating the word slowly. Comfort. For the rest of the evening, she didn't ask more, but her eyes stayed wide and thoughtful. Daniel realized something then. This wasn't going to be a simple roommate arrangement. This was someone seeing humanity for the first time, trying to understand every corner of it. And as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he wondered if he was ready. He had never been a teacher. He had never thought deeply about the things he did every day. But now, with Lyra under his roof, maybe he would have to. He didn't know that her curiosity would change them both. The next morning began with silence again. Daniel was used to waking up, stumbling into the kitchen, and making coffee half asleep. But now, as he rubbed his eyes and poured the hot drink into a mug, he felt someone watching him. He turned his head. Lyra was standing in the doorway, her silver eyes following every motion. She looked like a child watching a magician, waiting for the secret behind the trick you drink. "Dark liquid every morning," she said softly. Daniel gave a tired laugh. "Coffee, it helps us wake up." "Humans aren't good at mornings." She tilted her head. "It smells bitter, yet you smile when you drink." He took a sip, savoring the warmth. "It's not just taste. It's the comfort. The feeling that the day has started. Even if it's bitter, it makes us feel ready." Her brow furrowed, but she nodded. "Strange. You choose things not for survival only, but for feeling. That was only the beginning. During the day, Lyra asked more questions than he thought possible. She wanted to know why humans ate at fixed times instead of grazing like animals. She wanted to know why chairs existed when the floor was wide and free. She wanted to know why people locked their doors at night. Daniel tried to answer patiently, though sometimes he struggled. We eat 3 times a day because, well, it became tradition. Families gather. People take breaks from work. It's not just food, it's time together. When she sat at the table with him for lunch, he noticed how carefully she studied each movement. She held the spoon awkwardly at first, as if unsure whether to scoop or stab the soup. But she kept watching him, then copying him. Slowly, she got it right. "This is ritual," she whispered. Daniel chuckled. "I guess you could call it that." That evening, he ordered pizza, thinking it would be easier than cooking. The box arrived, and he placed the steaming slices on the table. Lyra sat opposite him, staring at the strange triangle of bread, cheese, and toppings. She sniffed it carefully, her nose wrinkling. Then she took a cautious bite. Her eyes widened immediately. She froze, chewing slowly, as if the world itself had changed in her mouth. She set the slice down and looked at him in disbelief. "It is chaos," she said at last. "Chaos." Daniel laughed. "Yes," she insisted, tapping her finger against the table. "Too many tastes, too many textures. Hot, soft, sharp, sweet, salty. It should not work." Yet, she hesitated, then picked up the slice again. "Yet it feels like harmony. Like warm chaos." "I like it," Daniel grinned. To him it was just pizza. To her it was discovery. Later that night they sat on the couch together. He turned on the television, not thinking much about it. Lyra jumped slightly at the sudden noise and flashing pictures. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen, widening with each passing moment. "Are these real?" she asked, watching a sitcom where actors laughed and argued. "No, just a show," Daniel explained. "Made-up stories. Humans like to tell stories, even fake ones. They make us laugh, cry, think," she blinked. "You cry for things that never happened?" "Yeah," he admitted with a smile. "Because stories remind us of real feelings. They give us hope or help us escape." For a long while she sat frozen, her hands pressed together, her eyes reflecting the glow of the screen. Daniel realized she wasn't just curious. She was trying to understand something much deeper. When the night grew quiet, she finally turned to him. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "Human, your ways are strange, but they are warm. Every small thing you do, it is more than survival, it is living." Daniel felt something stir in his chest. He never thought of his life as special. It was just routine, just ordinary habits. But to her, each habit was a window into something greater, something she wanted to touch. As he went to bed that night, he realized she wasn't only learning about humans. She was also teaching him to see his world through new eyes. Things he had taken for granted, coffee, pizza, laughter, suddenly felt brighter. And somewhere in his heart, he began to wonder what else she might discover. The days passed quickly. Daniel found himself adjusting to Lyra's presence in the apartment. It was no longer strange to wake up and see her silver eyes watching him with curiosity, or to hear her soft voice asking questions that seemed to come out of nowhere. But sometimes, the questions never ended. One night, after a long day at work, Daniel came home exhausted. His shoulders ached, his head felt heavy, and all he wanted was silence and rest. He placed his bag on the floor, loosened his tie, and collapsed onto the couch with a sigh. Lyra appeared almost immediately, stepping out of her room with quiet feet. Her eyes were bright, her tone eager. "Daniel, why do humans wear shoes indoors? Why do you lock your door every night? Why do you sleep when your body still has energy left?" He rubbed his forehead. "Not now, Lyra," but she didn't stop. She sat beside him, her hands folded on her knees. "I need to understand. You say you rest, but you're not weak. You say you eat 3 times, but hunger does not kill you. Lyra!" His voice came out sharper than he meant. He sat up, frustration boiling over. "Not everything has a reason, okay? Sometimes we just do things. We don't think about it, we don't explain it, we just live. Stop asking me about every little thing." The words cut deeper than he expected. He saw her freeze, her silver eyes dimming like a candle caught in the wind. Slowly, she lowered her gaze, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. "I understand," she whispered, her voice breaking in a way that made his chest tighten. She stood quickly and returned to her room without another word. The silence that followed was worse than noise. The apartment felt heavy, cold, as if warmth had been sucked away. Daniel sat there on the couch, guilt sinking into him. He hadn't meant to hurt her. He was just tired, overwhelmed. But he couldn't take back the sharpness in his voice, or the way she had looked at him before walking away. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, hearing every small sound in the apartment. Usually he would hear Lyra's soft humming as she explored human songs on the small device he gave her, or the quiet shuffle of her footsteps as she moved around curiously. But tonight there was nothing, only silence. For the first time since she had arrived, he realized her questions weren't just curiosity. They were her way of reaching out, of trying to connect. She had left her world, her people, everything she knew, and all she had here was him. Her questions were not interruptions, they were bridges, and he had pushed her away. In the morning, he found her sitting by the window, her knees drawn to her chest. The first light of dawn touched her shimmering skin, making her look fragile, almost breakable. She didn't turn to look at him when he entered. Daniel sat down quietly beside her. For a while, he didn't know what to say. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft. "I'm sorry, Lyra. I shouldn't have snapped at you. I was tired, but that's not your fault." She turned her head slightly, her silver eyes glistening. "I only want to understand," she whispered. "If I can understand, maybe I will not feel so alone." The words pierced his heart. He had never thought about what it meant for her. To live in a strange world, to see everything as foreign, to feel like a shadow among people who would never truly be like her. Her endless questions were not just curiosity, they were survival. They were her way of finding belonging in a place that didn't belong to her. Daniel placed a hand gently on the windowsill, close to hers, but not touching. "You're not alone. Not here, you're my friend Lyra. I should have remembered that." For a moment she didn't respond. Then slowly her shoulders relaxed. Her silver eyes softened and a faint smile appeared on her lips. That day Daniel made her hot chocolate for the first time. He didn't explain it, didn't lecture. He simply handed her the warm cup. She held it carefully, almost reverently, and when she sipped it, her whole face softened. "This feels like comfort," she said quietly. Daniel smiled. Maybe he didn't have all the answers. Maybe sometimes humans didn't even know why they did things. But if he could share comfort, warmth, and kindness, that was enough. He promised himself he would try harder. Not just to answer her questions, but to help her feel less like a stranger in a world that wasn't hers. The morning after their small conflict felt different. The air in the apartment was softer, almost fragile, as if even a whisper could break it. Daniel watched Lyra carefully as she moved around, and he noticed how she avoided looking directly at him. She was not angry, he could tell, but there was a quiet distance in her, like a wall gently placed between them. He didn't want that wall to stay. So later that evening, he tried something different. Instead of rushing to the couch and turning on the television, he went into the kitchen and made something simple. He remembered how her face had softened at the taste of hot chocolate the day before, how her silver eyes had almost glowed with calm. Maybe that was the answer. When he handed her the warm cup again, Lyra looked surprised. "For me?" she asked softly. "Yeah," Daniel said with a small smile. "For you." She held the cup in both hands as though it were a treasure, and slowly brought it to her lips. The steam curled against her shimmering skin. She closed her eyes as she sipped, and for a moment she looked at peace. "This feels safe," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "That's what it's for. Humans like comfort. Sometimes life is heavy, so we find little things to make it lighter." Lyra tilted her head, silver eyes searching his face. "You can share this with me. Even though I am not human." "Of course," Daniel said gently. "Why wouldn't I?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she lowered her gaze, her voice barely audible. "On my world, no one shares. Food is fuel, sleep is duty, living is survival. Comfort is not real. Warmth is not something we speak of." Daniel felt a pang in his chest. He had grown up with blankets, soft couches, laughter around dinner tables. He never thought of them as luxuries, they were just normal. But for her, they were foreign. For her, they were magic. Over the next few days, he began showing her more of these little comforts. He played soft music while they cooked dinner, and she tilted her head curiously at the gentle melodies. At first she asked, "What purpose does this serve?" But then, as the notes wrapped around the room, she stopped asking. She simply listened, her lips curving into a faint smile. He showed her how humans would sit near the window during a rainstorm, watching drops race each other down the glass. Lyra pressed her forehead against the cool pane, eyes wide as the water danced outside. "It is like the sky is weeping," she whispered. "But it is not sadness, it feels cleansing," Daniel chuckled. "That's pretty close to how we see it too." She even learned laughter. At first it came out as an awkward sound, almost forced. But one night, while they were watching a silly comedy show, Daniel caught her laughing for real. It was soft, musical, and slightly strange, but it was genuine. And when she realized he was looking at her, she blushed, covering her mouth. I did not mean to sound strange," she said shyly. "You don't sound strange," Daniel replied warmly. "You sound alive." The bond between them grew stronger in these moments. Daniel found himself slowing down, paying attention to small things he used to overlook. When he made tea, he thought about the warmth it brought. When he set a blanket on the couch, he thought about the comfort it gave. All the things that once seemed ordinary now felt meaningful because he saw them through her eyes. And for Lyra, the world no longer felt like an endless list of questions. It felt like a place that could hold her gently, if only she allowed it. Each cup of hot chocolate, each laugh, each quiet moment by the window was a thread weaving her into the fabric of something bigger, something human. One evening, as they sat together in silence, Lyra spoke softly. "Daniel, when I first arrived, I thought I would only observe. I thought I would learn facts and return home unchanged. But now, I feel something else." "What's that?" he asked. She placed her hand lightly on her chest, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the lamplight. "Warmth here with you?" "I feel warmth." Daniel smiled, his heart tightening. He realized then that it wasn't just about teaching her human ways. It was about sharing humanity itself, the small joys, the quiet comforts, the warmth that made life more than survival. And in return, she was teaching him too, to never take those small things for granted again. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the apartment that once felt ordinary became a small world of discovery. Daniel no longer saw Lyra only as a guest. She had become a part of his daily rhythm, and she, in turn, was no longer the silent observer she had been when she first arrived. She was still curious, still full of questions, but now her eyes carried something more: trust. One Saturday morning, Daniel decided it was time to show her something special. Instead of staying in the apartment, he took her out into the city. Lyra wore a long hood to hide her shimmering skin, but her silver eyes still peeked out, bright with wonder. The city was noisy and crowded, people rushing in every direction. At first, Lyra froze, her hands tightening at her sides. "So many voices," she whispered. "So many faces, it feels overwhelming." Daniel placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "I know, but watch carefully. It's not just noise. It's life. Everyone here has their own story, their own reasons for being." As they walked, Lyra noticed things he had long stopped paying attention to. She watched two children laughing as they chased bubbles down the street. She saw a woman stop to tie her son's shoe, smiling softly. She saw an old man feeding pigeons, his face calm and content. Her lips parted slightly. All of them, they do not know each other, yet they share these little moments. "Your species, you live together, not just beside each other." Daniel nodded. "That's what makes us human. We're not perfect. We fight, we argue, but we also care even for strangers sometimes." Later, he brought her to a small park. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the sound of laughter from families filled the air. Daniel handed her an ice cream cone, vanilla with sprinkles. She stared at it as if it were a puzzle. "It will melt," she said. "Exactly," he grinned. "That's why you eat it before it disappears." She hesitated, then took a cautious lick. Her silver eyes widened immediately, and she let out a small gasp. "Cold, sweet, soft. It changes as it touches my mouth." She looked at him almost accusingly. "This cannot be real," Daniel laughed. "It's very real, and it's one of the best parts of being human." For the next 10 minutes, he watched her eat slowly, carefully, as if every bite was sacred. When she finally finished, she looked thoughtful. "It is not just food, it is joy." That evening, back in the apartment, she decided to share something of her own world. She sat cross-legged on the carpet, her hands resting gently on her knees. "Daniel," she began softly, "you share many human things with me. I want to share mine too, but it is not warm like yours." He leaned forward. "I still want to hear it." She closed her eyes, her voice quiet and steady. "On my world, families do not live together. Children are raised by the community, Not by parents. There are no shared meals, no laughter in homes. We do not touch or hold each other. We do not tell stories that are not real. We only work, eat, sleep, repeat. Everything is for survival. Nothing more. Daniel felt his chest tighten. That sounds lonely, she nodded slowly. It is. We do not even have a word for comfort. We never needed it. But now, she placed her hand over the blanket draped on the couch, her eyes softening. Now I understand what I was missing. I never knew something could feel so gentle. Daniel's throat tightened. I'm glad you're learning, Lyra. You deserve warmth. Everyone does. That night she surprised him. As they watched the city lights from the window, she turned and said, I like being near you. Human ways are strange, but they are warm, and when I sit here I do not feel like an outsider. Her words touched him more than he expected. He had thought he was only teaching her about humans, coffee, pizza, laughter, small comforts. But she was teaching him too. She was reminding him of the value in things he had stopped noticing, the quiet beauty of ordinary life. For the first time, Daniel realized that she wasn't just his alien roommate anymore. She was his friend, and in her silver eyes, glowing faintly against the dark window, he saw something else too. Hope. The weeks rolled by faster than either of them expected. What once felt like an awkward arrangement had become something natural. Daniel no longer thought twice about setting 2 cups of coffee in the morning, even though Lyra only held hers to enjoy the warmth. He no longer minded the questions that slipped into his evenings because her curiosity had become part of his life. And Lyra, she no longer moved like a guest in someone else's home. She walked freely around the apartment, hummed softly to the songs Daniel played, and even laughed out loud when he made a clumsy mistake in the kitchen. She had learned to fold blankets, to water the plants, and to write small notes in shaky human handwriting. The apartment was not just his anymore. It was theirs. But good things rarely last forever. One afternoon, Daniel came home to find Lyra standing in the living room, holding a thin silver envelope. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the seal. Daniel froze, a chill running down his spine. He already knew what it was before she spoke. The program, she whispered. They say I must return soon. The words sank into him like stones. He sat down heavily on the couch, running a hand through his hair. He had known this day would come. Every agreement had an ending. But he had pushed the thought away, pretending it wasn't real. Now reality stared back at him in Lyra's silver eyes. When? He asked quietly. 2 weeks, she said. Her voice was flat, but her hands clenched the envelope so tightly that the paper bent. Silence stretched between them. The ticking of the clock on the wall sounded louder than usual. Finally, Lyra lowered her gaze. I thought I was ready. I thought I would learn, and then I would go home. That was the plan. But now, her voice broke slightly. Now leaving feels heavy. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her that she had changed his life too, that the thought of her room being empty again felt unbearable. But the words stuck in his throat. Humans weren't always good at saying what mattered most. The days that followed carried a strange weight. They tried to keep things normal, meals together, movies in the evening, long talks about silly things, but underneath, both of them felt the same shadow creeping closer. Every laugh carried a trace of sadness. Every quiet moment by the window felt like it might be the last. Daniel found himself watching her more closely, memorizing the way her silver eyes lit up when she tasted something sweet, the way she tilted her head when she was curious, the soft hum she made when she was content. He realized he didn't want those things to become memories. One night, as the city lights flickered outside, Lyra spoke softly. On my world, goodbyes do not exist. We leave without words because there is nothing to say, but now, I think I will not know how to say goodbye to you. Her confession struck deep. Daniel turned to her, his chest tight. Then don't, he whispered. We don't have to say it. We can just hold on to what we had. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Her silver eyes shimmered and she gave the faintest smile. Humans, you always find a way to make pain feel softer. On the final weekend before her departure, Daniel decided to give her something to keep. He went through his things and found a small notebook, its pages mostly blank. On the first page he wrote, "For Lyra, to fill with human memories." When he handed it to her, she touched the cover gently, as if afraid to damage it. It is empty, she said. Daniel smiled. That's the point. You can write down everything you've learned, everything you felt here. That way, no matter where you go, the warmth stays with you. For the first time since the letter arrived, tears shimmered in her silver eyes. She blinked quickly, but one slid down her cheek. Daniel, no one has ever given me something just for me. Thank you. That night, after she had gone to her room, Daniel sat alone on the couch. The apartment felt too quiet, too heavy. He realized then that the hardest part wasn't just that she was leaving. The hardest part was that she had become more than just a guest. She had become a friend, a companion, a reminder of what it truly meant to be human, and soon she would be gone. The morning of Lyra's departure came too quickly. The sun rose softly through the curtains, painting the apartment in pale gold. Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, his coffee untouched, listening to the quiet sounds of her moving in the other room. Every sound felt sharp, like the ticking of a clock reminding him that time was running out. When she finally stepped out, she was dressed in the simple clothes she had worn so many times before, jeans and a loose sweater Daniel had helped her choose from a store downtown. But in her hand she carried the silver envelope, now opened and folded neatly in the small notebook he had given her. Her silver eyes met his. For a moment neither spoke. Words felt too fragile to hold the weight of what they were both feeling. Ready? Daniel asked, though his throat was tight. She shook her head gently. No, but I must go anyway. They left the apartment together, walking slowly down the street toward the shuttle station. The city was alive as always, cars rushing, people talking, vendors shouting, but around them everything felt muted. Daniel could feel the world moving on, while his own heart wanted to freeze this single moment forever. At the station, the tall silver transport vessel stood waiting, shining in the morning light. A few others from the exchange program were already there, saying their farewells. Some hugged, some cried, some simply stood in silence. It was a scene filled with the ache of parting. Lyra turned to Daniel, clutching the notebook close to her chest. Do humans always feel this much when they say goodbye? Daniel gave a sad smile. Yeah, we feel too much sometimes. That's what makes us human. Her silver eyes softened, and for a second she looked almost fragile, almost like one of them. Then maybe I have learned more than I expected. When the time came, the voice over the speakers called her group. Lyra's hands trembled, and Daniel felt his chest tighten like never before. He didn't know what to do, whether to hug her, to shake her hand, or just let her go. But then she stepped forward and did something she had never done before. She reached out and wrapped her arms around him. It was awkward at first. Her kind did not hug. But then she rested her head against his chest. I learned this is how humans hold on to each other, she whispered. I want to remember it. Daniel closed his eyes and held her tightly, wishing the moment would never end. Remember this too, he said softly, that no matter where you go, someone out there will miss you. Her grip tightened for a second, and then she slowly pulled away. Tears shimmered in her silver eyes, but her lips curved in the faintest smile. Then I will carry that warmth with me. She walked toward the transport, her steps steady but heavy. Daniel watched until the last glimpse of her silver hair disappeared inside the ship. Then the doors closed with a soft hiss. The sound echoed in his chest like finality. When the engines roared to life and the ship lifted into the sky, Daniel stood there among strangers, staring upward. His eyes burned, but he let no tears fall. Instead, he took a deep breath and placed his hands in his pockets. Inside, he felt both empty and full at the same time. Empty because she was gone. Full because she had left something behind, something invisible but real. That evening, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. He walked into her empty room and sat on the bed. For a moment, he imagined her sitting there, tilting her head with curiosity, asking him another endless question, but the room stayed silent. On the desk, he noticed something. A piece of paper torn from the notebook he had given her. His heart raced as he picked it up. In her careful, shaky handwriting were the words, "Humans are not just strong, they are warm. Daniel, you taught me that." Below it was a small drawing of the two of them, simple, almost childlike, but full of heart. Daniel sat there staring at the note until the edges blurred with his tears. He realized then that she had taken a part of him with her, but she had also left a part of herself behind.